So in between, US could establish itself, and it could establish itself economically strong, and that is why after Second World War, the US emerged as the powerful country both economically and politically. And the second point is the Soviet Union also, it could manage itself after the Second World War, and it also emerged as one of the powerful countries of the world. And Soviet Union or Soviet Russia, it established its state on the basis of socialism. That time it was known or called as socialist country, USSR. Then guys, the next point is post-war settlement and the Bretton Woods institutions. Just as UNO, United Nations organizations, League of Nations, so a place's name Bretton Woods in the US, there a settlement took place, and some countries, those who took part in the World War, delegates of those countries, they attended the conference, and it held in July 1944. It is Bretton Woods. You note down the spelling, Bretton Woods, Bretton, Bretton Woods, WOODS. It is in New Hampshire, USA. After this conference, a settlement took place. What will be the strategies in near future? The economic strategy, the political strategy, main two strategies. Any country's development depends on these two strategies. Social, that is the secondary thing. Political and economic strategies. So in Bretton Woods, a conference took place in 1944. You can note down the date, in 1944. Then after that, decolonization and independence. Till the Second World War, people started thinking about their bondage and about their captive situation or capturing situation by the imperial states. So those countries, those were the colonies, they started raising their voices against the colonialism or against the colonial practice. And most of the countries, they could set themselves free from the imperial states. French, Dutch, English, Danes, Russians, many countries, they migrated to different lands all over the world, to America. French people, they reached America during Industrial Revolution. They settled down there. Many regions in America became colony, French colony. After that, English they reached. After them, Dutch they reached. So decolonization. That means one by one, after the Second World War, the colonies became free, and those states, those countries, they announced themselves independent countries. But it was not the end. In spite of them, or in spite of that, some regulation, some control, those controls and regulations were visible. they were not totally free. Why? Because decolonization took place. They announced themselves free after, since a long time, since decades. They were in a state of illusion because of the colonialism, because everything politically, economically, they were regulated by a foreign land, so they were accustomed to the system. But suddenly, after Second World War, when they announced themselves free, they could not cope up with the situation, and as consequence, they had to face once again economic downfall. So, to support them, other countries they came. So, not entirely, but you can say 40%, 50% they were dependent on the other countries economically and simultaneously to regulate the system of the country. Decolonization, undoubtedly it took place after First World War, but some of the countries they were still striving against the situation, especially the economic crisis, and those countries were mainly the affected amongst those countries. Africa also one of them, Latin America, Brazil also one of them. So they were regulated by some imperial states. After that, end of Bretton Woods and the beginning of globalization. Now the Bretton Woods conference, whatever the conference in 1944 took place, Bretton Woods conference. So they wanted to end this, conclude this. The people, they started thinking Europe, Asia, America, without regulation, they will be able to rule their own countries. So they wanted to get out of this group, that means Bretton Woods, this group or this society. So from the 1960s, 16 means 61, 62, from the 1960s, the rising cost of US overseas, now once again the US, it started facing economic crisis. In between 20 years, US economically it was quite sound because import-export business, overseas business, it was going well. But after Second World War, when it emerged as the powerful, economically powerful and politically powerful country, but after the winding up of Bretton Woods, US also started, once again it started economic crisis. The US dollar, that means the cost of US dollar, it fell down. So if the cost of US dollar fell down, that means US had to face once again financial crisis. So this eventually led to the collapse of system. The entire economic system collapsed in US, and fixed exchange rates and the introduction of a system of floating exchange rates. Floating exchange means the cost of dollar it was floating means fluctuating. Today 40, tomorrow 30, once again 60, once again 61. So there was no fixed rate of dollar, because it depends on the economy of the global market. You know that. And what is the concluding part of this chapter? That change in international financial system. The entire financial system also changed after Second World War. Now the time has come for the settlement or for the reconstruction. So The developing countries were then forced to borrow from Western commercial banks and private lending institutions. This led to periodic debt crisis, unemployment, lower income, and increased poverty in Africa and Latin America. They were the developing countries after post-World War. Already Africa and Latin America, both the continents were facing economic crisis. So for this crisis, they had to borrow money. But they borrowed money because you know that Africa manpower, due to lack of manpower, and in the same case happened with Latin America also, due to skilled manpower. Industrialization did not take place in those continents. People were quite backward, they were not skilled, they were not expert in the field of industries or in the field of technology. So they had to borrow money. Simultaneously, they had to hire skilled workers also, employees also. They borrowed money, but they could not repay it. So they became the debtors because they could not pay their debts. So during that time, people were forced to, other countries, they forced those continents to borrow money in high interest, so that those countries, that means the lender countries who used to lend money, they could flourish economically. So during this time, that means 1970s onwards, these two continents, Latin America and Africa, had to face an intense financial crisis or economic crisis. And now the last point is new economic policy in China. China had kept itself away from those conflicts, warfare or tussle. So China that time emerged as economically sound country during that time.